everybody. I'm Anita Finley, your host for Zoomer Times TV. Of course, it's all part of Boomer Times. And one thing that we're very privileged to have are authors. And from time to time, we get extraordinary authors. And today is the day for me to introduce Rose Mary Stiffin. Now, we already did one review with Rose Mary. But I just have to share this with you again. Rose Mary is so good at character development that I find it hard to believe these aren't real people. She is so good. And you know, this isn't her real profession. She actually is a PhD researcher and professor in Miami. And okay, so let's see. So she is in North Miami, and she is trying to find some cure for cancer. So that's her major job. However, to relax, and when she's not thinking about those things, she writes books. They're novels. So welcome to our show, Rose Mary. I'm so in love with you and your writing. You see that, and although I've never really met you, I just want to talk to you. Let's start off with one thing before we go to your book right now, the one that we featured on the cover of Boomer Times called Walk in Bethel. I've been doing this with a lot of our guests. Tell us something that's really special for you during this particular holiday season. What is it that you can think of either in the past or in the present, something that's really just wonderful? And I'm sure you have a lot of things to talk about. Just one thing though, maybe for a minute or two.
Well, I have a new great niece. She was born about a month ago, and I have another great niece on the way. So I think it's mostly about the fact that the family is continuing to grow and that COVID has not stopped a lot of things like new babies being born and just the happiness of having a baby in the family.
That's
so I'm
very
happy
nice.
about that.
Yep, that's very, very nice. I'm glad you shared that, because I have been seeing that people are giving birth. It's not stopping. They're being very careful.
Exactly.
And I'm glad about that. Yes. Well, I shared something else with someone another time, but because we have a lot of the same people listening, I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to share something else that I have triplet grandchildren who will be 15 in December. And I saw someone sent me a picture of their baby and they were feeding it. And I thought back to the time when here were 3 little babies, all, my son only had 2 arms as his wife. And I don't know how he managed the 3, but it was really a very pleasant time. And when I look back at their pictures and I see them now, it is really such a miracle, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. I agree.
Yeah, you brought up the baby thing, so I can continue with that.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about Walk in Bethel. Let me just ask you this. I know that you, of course, were brought up there in Mississippi, and you always talk about that in the front of your books and talk about you escaped the cotton fields and went on to higher education. Are you an exception?
Okay, so I'm going to say no, and here's why. I am one of 6 children, and I'm the youngest of those 6. And even though we all picked cotton, even though we all chopped cotton, we also all got a college degree. And my parents were uneducated. My father drove tractors, and as far as I know, he didn't know how to do anything else. And my mother she chopped cotton, picked cotton, but she was also a maid. So the fact that they had 6 children and we all got our college degree, and yet so I don't think that I'm unique. I think I'm one of 6 unique people, my siblings.
Well, that is unique, what you just told me, and that is amazing. What were your grandparents like?
My On my father's side, I saw them sporadically. On my mother's side, I also saw them sporadically. So I don't think that they had a huge influence on my life, negative or positive. It was mostly my parents. And even though they came from my grandparents, I didn't know them as well as, of course, I knew my parents. So my parents were my role models for being, for the work ethic, for studying hard, for getting good grades, because they wanted us to have a good, solid education. And they knew that the only way we were going to get out of the cotton fields was to be educated.
Yeah. And when did you actually start writing? Was this something you did when you were in elementary school, just little stories? I mean, is this something that's just in you pouring out?
Well, I don't know when I started writing, literally started writing, because I used to make up stories as I chopped cotton and picked cotton. So as a young adult, I realized that these stories had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so I would start writing, but I started writing literally like pen to paper as an adult. I already had my master's in organic chemistry, so I didn't think that I was a writer at 12 years old. I'm just making up stories. But in my 20s, I started writing them down. And I realized that that is exactly the genesis for Walk in Bethel, because these people had been in my head all along. And I didn't know that until I started writing them down. And I realized that these characters were telling me what they wanted me to write down, as if they were playing a movie in my head, and I'm just copying it down. Literally.
Wow, now that's interesting. Yeah, these are characters were saying, let me out, let me out.
I actually think that they were, because I remember when I started writing, it was going to be a short story. And I'm writing the character, and I realized that I didn't know his backstory. In order for me to write a character, I need to know their backstory. And the backstory came as clear to me as day that this is what happened. So let me start at the beginning. And from there, I just wrote Walk in Bethel. Literally just started writing. And I didn't stop until I was finished. I went back, I did edits, but it was as if the story was pouring out of me through these people in my head.
This is what the book looks like. I don't want
to
make sure there's too much light on it. Walk in Bethel. And it's big. It's 400 some, let's see, 400 some odd pages, I think. Yeah, it's 440 pages. It's really amazing, I have to say. And I was very privileged. I'll just jump to this, that when I first said something to, I met Rose over the email, and Rose, she wanted more than one book. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, I have 5 books. You do? You have 5 books? Okay. And she said, I'm writing more. I said, okay, well, maybe we're going to have to do, yeah, I want to do all the books. I said, okay. Because see, they've been a part of you for a long time. It wasn't like, oh, I just wrote a book. And of course, she's writing another one too, even as we speak. But I want to go over this one. So, a lot of people who haven't been to Mississippi and just hear about it, understand that if you are a Black person, you suffer in the South. A lot of things happen that are not, they're not kind. They're bullying and all. And of course, that was the interesting part about this, that there was such a nice a nice woman who was trying to help someone. And unfortunately, wasn't a woman at the time, she was just a girl, but she was a girl, she was married though, but she got hurt, and a very nice young man helped her. But unfortunately, sometimes things turn weird when you're being helped. And I don't think we should give away the story, but it amazed me how you brought that all the way towards the end it was like book 3. Each one was a separate book, was 3 books, right? I mean, 1 book, but 3 places. And how you carried through the ancestry of all that. So I'm going to challenge you with that. So we all know of people who get raped and people who get saved. And then, right now it's becoming common no matter where you live. It's unfortunate for women, but usually there's always someone who jumps in and tries to help. And so he was a hero. You did have a hero and a heroine.
Yes. Well, I realized that I wanted Mike Poe, his name was Michael Poe. I wanted him to be a very nice guy who did a very uncharacteristic thing, but it was because of the trauma of that night that they both experienced. And neither one of them, I think, were to blame for what happened. But that had to explain the genealogy of one of my characters. The only way I could figure that out was that this event had to happen. And he was not a mean person. He did save this woman's life. He saved her life. Yes. And this was a consequence of the saving of her life. And I don't blame either one for what happened, because up until that event, and there are always defining events in a person's life, until that event happened, there was nothing wrong with them. And because of this one event, I did not want it to define them forever. It was an event that they could go get over, and they did. And the consequences of it, of course, is seen in the children, but I maintained redemption and love throughout the novel because I didn't want them to suffer for that one mistake.
Yes, I know you did that very well. After that happened, of course, and I really liked her husband. Washington. What wasn't his?
His name was Belle Washington. He was a minister. Now I don't do anything biographical in any of my novels, not really, but I patterned Belle Washington after my father. I think that if this had happened with my mother was very understanding. He was very philosophical, very intelligent, even though, of course, he had no education. And he was an innately good man. And I always respected him as a man. He was not a good provider. I'm not going to go there because this was 1950s and 60s Mississippi. But you can be a good person without being a good provider. And I was able to separate the two. So because he was such a good person, I could overlook the fact that society did not allow him to be a good provider.
Right. No, that's true. No, he was good. And he was a very caring husband.
Very caring. And I think that's what I wanted it to be, that he was going to be a forgiving, loving person. And he was going to try to understand what happened. And eventually, of course, he did, without any regrets. And I brought in the fact that his being a minister allowed him to be able to use God as a way to get over this hump, so to speak.
Yes, and he loved the child, so
he loved the child.
And he took it in as so it was really a wonderful thing that happened. And then when you move from one scenario into the next, you're able to really tie them together in certain little threads, aren't you? You keep it tied all the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when you're thinking about these characters, I've asked this of other authors, do you have like little yellow stickies you put up all over to keep you moving in the right direction?
For Walking Bethel, I didn't really use a lot of sticky notes because somehow the story was just being told to me in my head. But for my other novels, I do use plot development. I make notes. I say, okay, this is going to happen in this chapter. So for Walking Bethel, I think I wrote only one chapter myself. Everything else was coming from whoever these characters were in my head. In
your life, were you ever hurt like that? Were you ever
No.
Nothing ever had happened to you like that. It was just something you met. Did you have friends that had this happen?
I actually no. I have always wanted to write that scene. I have always wanted to write that. And by writing it and still having a way for it to come out as a good thing, that allowed me to be able to write it. I don't think I could have written it where she may have been molested by the two boys who were going to do it originally, because that would have been too gruesome for me to put down on paper. And the fact that I could write these two characters in such a way that they deserve the hanging that they got told me that I understood the nature of the crime. I've never experienced it, no. And
right.
Thank God I don't know anybody else personally
Yep.
who has experienced it either.
Right. And in society today, this was quite an appropriate thing, because we're seeing some terrible things that are happening, and Black Lives Matter and all that. So it's funny, you wrote this. How long ago did you actually write this? A few years ago.
I started writing Walking Bethel in my 20s. I'm not going to say how old I am, 64. So actually, it took me several years to write it, to hone it, and to edit it, rewrite it, etc. So I wrote this well before the movement of Black Lives Matter came about. But since, I've always thought that all lives matter, I don't think that, it was anything that was so monumental, but all lives matter. And I did write this well before Black Lives Matter became a national movement.
Yep. Yeah, I understand that. It's and I have said this in my reviews of your book, and I'll say it again so people understand it. There are very good stories out there that authors like to write, but if you don't have a good character development, it's not good enough. The story just it's out there, it falls flat. But unless you do what Rose Mary Stiffin does, she makes each character like it's someone sitting across the table, or some people you don't want to sit across the table, actually. But she is such a good developer of the characters. And you do this in all your books, Rose Mary. And I think that you've had wonderful testimonials from people. And I think they all pick that up. And I don't know, that's a natural for you. Not everybody has that. They have to try to work on that. Are you that way with your friends? You're just really into people?
Well, I'm very much into people. And to be honest, I like to watch people. And that allows me to create characters in my head that I don't become that character, but in a way I do, because I'm writing these fictitious people as if they were real. And so I have to look at them holistically and realistically to say, yes, this is what they would do. And they tell me that they're going to do this or they're not going to do this. So I try to keep it as honest and real as possible, because to me, they are real. They embody me. They're part of me, but they're not real, but they're part of me. So I guess they are real.
That's true. So I hope I want you to write this down. It's called Walk in Bethel, Bethel. I did a review in the December issue for this. You'll want to order it, and you can go to Amazon.com and go to Walk in Bethel, or just put in, you can see all of Rose's books, Rose Mary Stiffin, Stiffin. She's a PhD, but she's a brilliant writer. And I was hoping, and I don't have any connections with any film people, but I would just hope someone would discover you.
I would love to hear from your mouth to God's ears. And it's because I see them as movies. I really do. I see them as being put onto the big screen.
Yes.
The characters are real. They can be. So I would love that. So let's just cross fingers and make yes.
Yeah, well, I hope so. South Florida, the magazine goes to South Florida, and there are retired, I'm sure, movie directors and producers, and hopefully somebody, there's a book I've been reading is called Conscious Luck. Magnificent little book, and you make your luck. You got to believe it's going to happen, and I'm going to think about it, and you think about it, and let's figure that out because.
Well, I read the book The Secret years ago, and I thought it would help me, but it didn't. But it didn't stop me from writing. So I'm going to keep on writing. I'm going to keep on trying, and hopefully somebody will pick it up and like it. I'm working on my 7th novel. My plan is to write 10 or more. So I've already done half of them, and I'm working on 2 now. So I've got 3 more, and the ideas are in my head for the other 3.
Oh my heavens, we have to take an image inside your head and your brain. We have to make sure we salvage your brain because it's unique. And I'm so glad you found us because we feel privileged. We do a lot of book reviews every month. We do 1 or 2, and sometimes we've done 3. And all of them, everyone has, their talent. But for one person to have so much talent, it's probably unfair.
Well, I don't know if it's fair, but I always, talk about my parents, and my mother was not artistic at all. It's interesting. I don't know where I got this desire to write from. My mother was very focused, very almost regimented, because to me, if she could have been educated, she would have been an engineer. So, and I think engineers are very, strict in their thinking. And my father was philosophical, but he was also not a dreamer. So I don't know where, I think it really came from the fact that I'm in the cotton field and I'm working and my brain is allowing me to think. But of all of us, I think that we all 6 of us had some type of artistic talent, so
really?
I think it was inherited, but I don't know from whom.
Great grandparents.
And I don't know them exactly.
But none of your family then ever wrote a book. You're the only one.
I'm the only one, and it's interesting that as far as I know, I'm the only one. I know that I'm the first one, if not the only one. But I know that my siblings could have written a book if they had desired to. I believe that totally. My oldest brother was a biology teacher for years, and he used to come home and teach us. And so I learned science before I learned anything else, because he would come home and teach us what he was learning in high school. And I liked that. So I think he could have written a book about how to be a good teacher, because he was an excellent teacher. My second brother is a beautiful singer. Nobody can sing in our family except him. Nobody. And we don't know where he got the talent from. So each one of us has our own ability. And I think that made us unique, but at the same time, a true Stiffin.
Yeah.
We were all the same makeup.
Absolutely lovely. And are they married and have children? So you have a big family?
Well, we have a big family. My oldest brother has 4 daughters. My third brother has 3 children. My youngest brother has 3 children. Unfortunately, I don't have any, but I wanted them. And my sister doesn't have any. But I've always enjoyed my nieces and nephews. I enjoy my students as if they're my own children. And now they're young enough to be my grandchildren. So that tells you how old I am.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I want to tell everybody again, please do walk in Bethel. And that's Bethel, Rose Mary Stiffin, Dr. Stiffin, Stiffin. And before we run out of time, I just wanted to let everybody know that you're working so hard on finding a cure for cancer. And I know that every day you're just working, hoping that something comes into your brain, doesn't it? That's the missing piece.
So cancer can be treated and it can go into remission. And I am working on synthetic drugs. Synthetic, that means we're making them. And some have proven to be very useful, but I want them to be tested against as many different cancers as possible. And that part I'm working on. And in January, I'm going to start working on more compounds and submitting them to the National Cancer Institute for free testing. So we are working on synthetic compounds that could be possibly used to treat different cancers.
Oh my, oh man, I don't know how you sleep at night. You really are charging ahead all the time. I can't wait for it to be easier so I can come down there, or we can meet somewhere to really meet you and hug you and hold your hand.
I would love that.
Yeah, yeah, we will do that.
I like you
We
so
will
much.
do that at some point, Rosemary. I mean, it's such a privilege to, because I do know you so well from your books, and I'm always so amazed at what what you've accomplished and what you are accomplishing. And as a matter of fact, I think it's this Wednesday I'm going to get on the Scripps. I know I sent you that, but Scripps has these interviews that you can hear that are open. It's the Zoom, and they're wonderful. This one is on I think it's HIV. I'm not really sure, but I love to listen to what they do. It's wonderful that I used to go there up in Jupiter and attend them in the audience, but now having it on Zoom is excellent.
Oh, okay. I would love to get the link to go because
I'll find it. I'll try to find it and send it to you. Are you doing any Zoom for your students, or are they all there in class? What are you doing?
Well, now that school is over, we submitted the grades today. We start back in January for the spring semester, and hopefully we're going to be face to face. But if not, we're going to go back to remote. Remote doesn't always work in terms of student learning, and I'm hoping that we can do face to face, but we'll go with what the situation dictates. There is a vaccine, several out now, so that means that maybe we can go face to face if the majority of the people around us are vaccinated.
Oh, I'm going to be vaccinated, definitely, because I'm an older adult and I plan on doing that. But I think you'd probably be a very good teacher, because the way that you express yourself in words on paper, I'm sure you express yourself to your students. So Zoom could be still very good for someone like you. Not all professors have your ability, but even without being in your class, I just know somebody who's really good.
Well, I do my best, and I do want my students to work hard, and I'm there for them. I'm always there for them, So yeah.
And what courses do you actually teach?
Well, in the spring, I'm going to be teaching organic chemistry 2, and I might be teaching biochemistry. And biochemistry is needed for pre-med, and I have a lot of students who want to do medicine. So I don't know right now if I need to teach biochem, but if I do, I'm going to put it on my schedule and teach biochem, but I teach organic. And I have a master's in organic chemistry and a PhD in biochemistry.
And I see, those are tough subjects, but people need to, that's what tells you if you can go on to medical school, if you can pass those. I know that.
Well, and people don't like it, but organic and biochemistry, they are kind of the weed out courses. And I want my students not to be weeded out. So that means I've got to bring it as much as I can so that they can know as much as I can get them to know. Right.
Do you have mostly male or female in your classes?
Interestingly enough, mostly female. Now we have males, but they go into engineering. The females go into nursing, pre-med. So I've had a class years ago, I had about 30 students. They were all female, not a single male. So we're trying to figure out how to get males into STEM and to get them to be, I don't know why they don't want to go into STEM. They're very brilliant, but I think they're thinking that it's going to label them in some way as a nerd. I don't know, but Mostly it's female. Mostly it's female.
That's something else to think about. Yeah, who knows? But so you have only taught on the university level. Did you ever teach in a high school?
About 40 years ago, I taught as a substitute teacher in high school, but
Uh,
that was years ago. So I
okay,
always taught at the university level, full time, always.
that's fantastic. Well, we're about out of time, and I just love this. I was looking forward to it, and we will be having a lot more with all your books. But at least this was one that I was anxious to get since it was a book of the month. So thank you very much, and stay safe. And we will talk again, Rosemary.
Thank you so much, Nita. Thank you, Dan. I
My
really
great pleasure.
appreciate it. Thank
My
you.
great pleasure. Okay, goodbye, everybody. This was extraordinary. You'll remember Rosemary Stiffin. You need to remember her. Okay, so we'll be back with another interview shortly.